Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to share it with me and write an Apple iTunes review so I can keep the good stuff coming your way. If you aren't already following me, you can find me on Instagram at Tatiana_Kuto. Make sure to tag me in any posts that you share. I love and appreciate you so much and cannot wait to connect with you in the next episode. In the meantime, go out and radiate your light into the world.
It's wild. Like, seasonal depression is very real. I was talking to a lot of my friends about that. I was like, oh, I just actually needed the sunlight. I'm good now.
Like, I know. It's like, oh, people aren't as grumpy or like,
yeah, totally.
rude.
It's real. It's a real thing.
It's real. I feel like if you're from the Northeast, you get it. And the people that don't, when they visit in the middle of winter, they're like, you guys are assholes. And I'm like, yeah, they don't see the sun.
It's so funny because I was listening. I love Noah Khan, obviously, like everybody does, I think. And he has that song, I'm Mean Because I Grew Up in New England. And I just really embody that. Like, it's real. It's a real thing.
It is. And it's exactly why I moved to Florida. But I'm so excited to have you here. Why don't we just start with you just sharing a little bit of like who you are, what you do, how you got into doing this, because like I have read the backstory and I think it's impressive and I have questions to ask, but yeah, let's get started there.
Yeah, well, for those listening, my name is Maddison Ciccone, and I am a speaker, a coach. I published a gratitude practice, so I guess you could say I'm an author. And for the better part of the last decade, I've also been teaching at a little place called Xoxo. So maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't, but it's an indoor cycling studio that is all around the country. And I've had the pleasure of doing that. I really started my career in entertainment and music business. I went to college in Nashville, Tennessee, which led me out to LA. I lived the Hollywood lifestyle, which was good and bad and ugly and everything in between, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And I was out there for a little while. And then I eventually kind of hit several different rock bottoms, whether it was getting let go from a job or just like partying too much and all this other stuff that really eventually led me to Soul Cycle in a way. And then they brought me back to the East Coast via a opening they needed in an instructor. And that's kind of how I roundabout ended up back on the East Coast. I think I didn't say this, but I grew up in Rhode Island. So very much full circle. Like if you could draw a full circle around
the country.
US. Yeah. Like I've done it all and been there. So
I love that. I think it's funny. I think, and we'll go deeper into your story, but like, hitting rock bottom, my rock bottom, I was the Orange Theory coach. I feel like health and fitness can be such a great avenue for people to discover themselves, move whatever energy that they're like blocked or having to like process, at least for me.
1,000%. I have this tagline that I say, move your body, change your breath, change your state, change your state, change your mindset, change your mindset, change your life.
Exactly.
And I'm very much somebody that like, I have to move. It can't be just mindset cognitive, although that's like so important. I feel like it really has to be like somatic, the body training, like the movement, it does. You got to shake shit up
in the body. Yeah. That's what got me into like breath work and somatic work. Cause I was doing such deep mindset work, which is like, heck yeah, great. Like become a master of your mindset, but like hold up, your trauma and your energy and your emotions are all stored in the body. So if you're not moving your body, you're just sitting in the shit essentially.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So you're still teaching at Soul Cycle, which I don't think that's that small of a place. At least I've heard it.
No, that's like a joke. I'm like,
okay, I was going to say, I'm like,
it's like actually a big deal. It's just like when I talk to people and they're like, I've never heard of it before. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever.
Like, you're under a rock.
Yeah.
So how many classes do you teach a day?
So I actually recently went down in my schedule. So when I first started teaching, I was anywhere from like 16 to 18 plus a week, which is bananas. It means you're teaching 3 to 4 times a day, 6 days a week. And recently I went down to 7 classes a week, which feels like such a far cry from where I've been, honestly, to explore more opportunities beyond the bike, which has been where a lot of my prime focus has been on getting more speaking engagement. I love doing like corporate speaking and workshops for different companies, sororities, like places. It's like kind of random. I've gotten hired for so many different things, which is really cool. And just working more on that and like the business of Madison, because I feel like so much of what I created during obviously COVID and not being able to ride, I call it like the snapback when we went back to on the bike and in person,
Yeah.
I never really took a moment to be like, oh, you're like actually, you have 5 jobs now. And you never really took any stock in that of like what, you only have so much energetic output. So it was really
Yeah.
about kind of trying to pull back like the arrow to see how we could push forward and make things better.
No, I think that's huge. I think, I mean, I'm personally in a season of like that pulling back and that rest. I'm
Yeah,
like, okay,
it's
things are
so
shifting.
challenging. It's so
Yeah.
challenging,
It's,
especially
if
if
you're a
you are
doer,
like,
high energy.
yes.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, it's like hitting a wall. It's like
Yeah.
rest, rest, rest. And I'm like, dude,
I
it's a
know,
mind
I know.
game.
It really is. It's really challenging to have faith right now and to trust the process. Like you always hear, trust the process, and you're
Yeah.
like, square off. I am very
Yes.
used to, I was a former D1 athlete. So I cheered through college. I ran track. I danced. I'm always,
You're
I've
always
always
been
been in
busy.
movement, always been in movement. What's the next practice? What's the next thing?
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable with bulldozing through life,
Yeah.
honestly.
I feel
To
that.
not default into that is so weird. Like even now I'm like, oh, well, I could just like launch a little something, or I could just like, what if I just do a little something? Like it's very challenging. Just be like, sit back and relax.
It's
Which
wild.
yeah. And it comes from a good place, right? I feel like it comes from the place of like wanting to serve and inspire, which I know you do too. So it's not like it's a bad thing. It's just really refocusing the energy so we can just be more intentional with where we
Yeah.
put it and what we do with it.
Yeah. And so we're not hitting burnout, and we're just making
Yeah.
sure we're in alignment with when we're doing it. I had, it was in a previous podcast episode. Oh, I think it was with Melanie and Lair from Alpha Femme. And she was saying,
Yeah.
she's like, think about it. Taylor Swift goes on hiatus for 2 years and then drops the best album ever. She's like, you need to take a step back to then
Totally.
catapult forward. And I was like, oh my goodness, I needed that analogy so much because I'm such a masculine energy. Like, let's just do.
Same.
Like we have
Let's
one
just
life to
do.
live. Like, let's live the best life. However, we need to find that balance. So how did you, or maybe not even, yeah, 7 classes a week, that's a lot. And I was an Orange Theory coach. I wasn't doing the workout. Like
Mm,
you're riding the bike with them.
yeah.
How do you handle that? Like how do you, with your body and your energy, like how, yeah.
Yeah. I think that you just have to, you really have to learn to use your body as a tool. Your body is your business card. So you have to get
Mhm.
really good at recovery. You have to get really good. You have to take naps during the day, which feels so weird. And you feel like just such a schmuck. And you have to retrain your brain. You're basically an athlete. You're an elite athlete.
Yeah,
So
100%.
I would listen to what's LeBron's schedule. And I know like it's like LeBron, but I would look at other athletes and they'd be like, yeah, I have a non-negotiable nap from 2 to 4. And I was like, me too now. Like things
Wow.
like that. I was just like, you just have to find what works for you. And obviously eating and diet, there's so much that goes into it. And I think you
Yeah.
really do figure a lot of it out through trial and error. But it's a full-time thing, full-time gig to try to keep the ship running.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because I think a lot of people just assume it's like your typical 9 to 5 and you have to be on, but it's like no, like people live different lifestyles, like celebrities and influencers even. I was seeing this woman talk about influencers. I'm like, it's a lot of work. And even though it's not a 9 to 5, they may be up at 10 p.m. at night doing something different than you are. And it's like you
Yeah.
just have to find a routine and schedule that does work for you.
Yeah. Figuring out routines is I think can be very challenging, especially when you're chasing bigger goals and dreams, especially for people that are in that kind of whitewater of I am working my full-time corporate job, but I'm also chasing this side hustle and
Mhm.
trying to kind of play the seesaw with it both. And it's a little chaotic.
Yeah.
But I think that that's really how you figure out, okay, like maybe this is something I want to do, or maybe this is something that could actually be something. And there's always kind of this delicate ballet dance with your energy when you're trying to figure anything out in the realm, like that example I just gave, or just in your own life that could be so different from everybody else's.
Yeah, really balancing that energy. I know for me, when I was working in corporate, I would then go to the gym to be a personal trainer. And that's a lot. Like I was out of the house already at 4:30 a.m. to train myself. And it's like, okay, how do I move? I didn't take naps, but I just like did other things to like hone in my energy. But that lit me up. So it's like I had like a second wind, but then I was
Yeah.
going to bed at like 8:39. So I'm like, you may think that's funny, but that's what I had to do to keep up with what
Yeah.
I was doing. And I knew it was
Yeah.
temporary because it's just a transitional period. So I think it's like always reevaluating your routines. I say that all the time. I'm like, every things are always changing. I'm changing right now and it's
I always
difficult, but
say the strategy, sometimes you have to, what is the line I say? Oh my God, I'm going to like cry if I can't think of it. You have to adjust your strategy for the reality of the race you're running.
Mm.
There we go. We got
Yeah,
there.
that's good. Yeah, and each race is totally different. Like you said, you just dropped down to 7 classes.
Yeah,
So you're gonna have to change up your routine. How cool is
totally.
that?
Strategy's got to look different to match what the race is.
Yeah, no, I love that.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, because I like was in the corporate world, but you were in like Hollywood world. And that's like
Yeah.
totally
Which
different.
was still corporate in a way.
Okay. So I was gonna say, tell us a little bit about that. Like what did life even look like being an
Yeah.
assistant?
So it was a little crazy. I was an executive assistant for a while, some time there. And that is everything you can imagine it to be. You're on call 24 hours a day. You're running crazy errands. You're doing anything and everything, not only for your boss, but for high profile clientele that's friends with your boss or clients of your boss. So, like, you kind of are playing everything to everybody and being all the hats and running everything, like running
Wow.
everything from, the booking flights and cars and things like that to, quite frankly, like chauffeuring people's kids around. Like, it was like you are everything. And
Wow.
it's actually, I always say, if you really don't know what you want to do in life and you are fresh out of college, I think that being an executive assistant in any way, or personal assistant to a very high profile person, company, etc., you learn such insane transferable skills.
Mm,
And while it might not be the best job in the world, like it actually might be really, really gnarly. You just learn things that is so many intangibles that I feel like I don't even think about, but I'm so grateful for now, because like I just know there's nothing that makes me uncomfortable. Like, I could be in
mm.
a room with literally anybody. Like, I've been in a room with some crazy people. Like, you
I
don't have you're not scared to look people in the eye. I feel like so much now is like these interpersonal social skills are being left behind because we are so obsessed with social media, and it's just such a huge
yeah.
part of business and life in general. I am so grateful for my experience there with that, because it just taught me so much.
I
Like,
mean,
it
you
gave
probably had to
me,
be like
yeah,
on your toes. Like there
yeah,
was
just like
no
jump. How you didn't ask how high, you just did it. You always found the yes. You always found the solution. It made you extremely resilient. I mean, I think human beings are extremely resilient in
Mhm.
general, but it just made you, like, again, like very nimble, think on your toes, like you're ready for it, you're going. Um Always finding the yes and figuring things out. And I think, one of my favorite books is Marie Forleo's Everything is Figure Outable. And it
Mm,
really, really resonated in that job. Like, that's just what you did. And so I
figured it
did
out.
that for a while. And then I kind of went into from entertainment, kind of like music world. I went into digital marketing and advertising. And that's really where the square, like shoving the square into the round peg hole or whatever, was
Mm,
just not working for me. I found that I was like in these middle level management positions, or like just these mid level positions where I was kind of doing admin work for like everybody. I remember the last job I was at was a digital marketing agency, and I got hired to be an EA. Like, that was what I got hired for. But they had me like doing HR and finance and like all this random stuff that I
mm,
didn't know how to do. And it's so interesting when you look back, it's always 2020. I never was like, yo, I don't know how to do this, or I don't know what's going on. And I kind of just tried to keep going around with it and being like, well, this is what I have to do to pay my dues. And then there was like a bigger round of layoffs and I got laid off. And I found this happened to me twice, where I was just like, clearly this isn't working.
mhm.
Clearly this is the universe being like, this ain't it, sis. And I think that's when my first big grand pivot came, with moving towards Soul Cycle and just fitness in general. So going back to what we talked about of like practicing the things outside of your 9 to 5, being an EA or doing these jobs, it's like a 12-hour workday sometimes,
Yeah.
8 to 12, crazy. I was getting my yoga license at the same time. So my Thursday night, Friday
Oh
night,
my
all day
gosh.
Saturday, and all day Sunday, I was doing that because I was so, again, it lit me up.
Yeah, your passion.
And so when I got let go from that final kind of quote unquote corporate job, my friends were like, what are you doing, Mats? You go to Equinox before work, you go after work, you are constantly in this like community of boutique fitness, whatever. It's what you should be doing. And this was really at the time when Soul Cycle was that rocket ship. And so I just put like all my eggs in the basket and was like, I'm going to work at SoulCycle. Like I'm going to work there. I don't care what I do. I'm going to get in and then I'll figure it out. And that's really what I did. I got in at the management level of the studios. So, I left to my friends this kind of like cushy, quote unquote, corporate job. I went to like spray shoes and work behind the desk at SoulCycle as an assistant studio manager. No intention of becoming an instructor. It was literally never my intention. My true intention was like, I'll start here in LA and I'll eventually get put in New York somehow because I'll work on the marketing team or I'll somehow make my way up to corporate from the field. And then through that, I just started writing for all these people. It became, part of my routine. I loved writing. I loved the music, brain body connection. Still do. And I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But then people were like, why don't you do this? Like, why don't you do this? Why don't you teach? You write up for like, why don't you teach? You'd be great at it. And I call that the knock, to be really, really aware of the signs in your life. And to me, it always comes like, usually people will tell you where your skills are before you even notice them.
100%.
I kept hearing, you should do this, you should do it. And then finally I was like, maybe I should do this. And that's when I auditioned and I went on that whole journey with SoulCycle. And honestly, it led me, here I am almost 9 years later. Yeah. So
I love that. I love it. I think it's true. People really will tell you like
totally
what you're naturally gifted at. And you're like, oh, why? Like follow that, because sometimes people will see you in a different way than you see yourself.
1,000%.
And that can give you the confidence. It sounded like you had like, I can't even imagine being an assistant to some people and like being confident in some of those rooms because.
Yeah. I don't think I was confident. I think I was very submissive. And I think there's ways that you have to be in that. But I think I was confident in my ability to speak to people. I've always been a very social, outgoing, energetic person. I joke that one of my old bosses used to call me Elle Woods. And I don't know if he meant it like in a mean way, like I was
Or
really
just like
dippy, or if he meant like, I actually have no idea how he meant it. But I always took it on like, I even joke about that now. Like one of my favorite scenes is like when she's like, I'll show you just how, whatever. And then that's like, that song's like, better watch out, going for the knockout. Like that's one of my theme songs. It's like on my playlist. It's like, my, get up, get going playlist. And so it's just, I think that I've always innately had something like that, but I don't think I really understood my true confidence until I would say like more recently. And that just came from a different sense of grounding and knowing who you are. And I truly think that just also comes with age and life experience.
Yeah, I agree. And I was going to say, like, I feel like you go through experience. I think like that probably help you build the confidence in yourself in a humble way. Like confidence is a great thing.
So here's 2 ways I explain confidence. Like my lips are not moving. Obviously, one vein of confidence is time under tension. It's the 10,000 hour rule. It's practice and practice and practice until you start to feel comfortable in the realm you're in. And that breeds confidence in you. So i.e. SoulCycle. My first, year, I was doggy paddling through life. I didn't know which way was up or down. I had not a lot of confidence because I wasn't really comfortable with the movements and what I was doing yet.
Yeah.
And that can go for anything. Kicking a soccer ball. It could go for, I always say there's always the 3 to 6 months when you start a new job where everything is new and it's hard and you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? It takes a little while to get your stride, right? There's that kind of confidence that just comes through action and the doing and trying again and again. That.
Yeah.
Then I think there's this other vein of confidence. And I've talked about this before in different arenas and stages and things like that, of undoing. So I think a lot of what confidence is as we get older, I think especially as women, is undoing all these voices and these programming that we've been told or we took on, this doctrine or this doctrine or dogma that we've taken on as our own narrative from like someone else's story, and people putting limitations on what we can do. And so, you always hear this, I want to live my most unscripted life. I want to live my most my most authentic life. And I think that comes from obviously a lot of life experience. And like we said, your rock bottoms, the good, the bad, and everything in between. To this point, it's like, like I always think of like, know thyself. It's this deeper sense of knowing yourself, who you are, what you stand for, morals, characteristics. It's just this deeper grounded sense of knowing. And that I think comes off as a different type of confidence. And you'll feel it in rooms when you're like, oh, that person's just so cool, or like, I just feel so relaxed around you, or whatever. You just like, let me be myself. It's like this, it's more of like an aura or essence or effervescence you have when you just like really understand deeply who you are. And I think that really it comes from going on the journey of self-discovery and the undoing and kind of the interrogating the darkness and the voices. I know that we talked a little bit about, I call it like dancing with your skeletons. And that's really just like, no one can hold anything over my head. Like, I know who I am. I know what I've done. I've done the work around it. And I'm good with me. I spent so many years hating me. I I don't have time for that anymore.
Yeah. No, I love how you just said that. And I love how when when you address the skeletons in your closet, like people they don't have that power over you. It's like, no, I already dealt with that. Like, I'm good. I've forgiven myself. I know who I am. XYZ. What would you say was like your biggest challenge of like the unlearning or the skeleton that like you really, maybe struggled with the most?
Yeah. I think for me personally, so I've talked about this a lot, but I got a very, very gnarly DUI. Gnarly is my word today. Like, am I a California girl?
I like
my California roots coming out?
Is it coming out?
So I got a really, really bad DUI in California. And, I went to jail for a weekend, and I had to do like a lot of crazy stuff. I had to do hundreds of hours of community service, all this stuff, rightfully so, total piece of shit move. And I feel like so much of like what is going to kind of parlay here, back and forth here. I think so much is like wrapped around shame when it comes to our confidence. Like, I'm no longer this good girl. I don't have this squeaky clean record. I'm not what people think I am. Da 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 da. And that's like what holds us back in our life and makes us not confident. It makes us feel like crap. We're shackled by shame in some way in our life because of something we did, or how it's going to look, or what people are going to think.
Yeah.
And some point there was this moment after that where that was definitely a rock bottom for me, like, where I was just like, to what end? Like, who is this serving? And I think that was really a light bulb or a light switch moment for me of just like this whole, I think a lot of it does also stem from perfectionism. Like, I'm not perfect. I'm flawed. Like, I have a mess. And that doesn't discredit or disqualify me from then living a great and amazing life. Because I think that's what people really take on as their narrative and story. Like, I am this thing instead of I did this thing.
Yes,
right?
people aren't their behaviors. Like,
Exactly.
the I am is different than like
so much
the action.
And I think that was really a big learning process. I think that a lot of the partying and the drinking and all this behaviors that were really fun at first really just deteriorated who I was. And it's so interesting because I've really done a good amount of work around this. Like, usually you're trying to run for something or numb out from something. I think I was just a reckless party girl. Like, I just wanted to be like some starlet in LA, like jumping velvet ropes. Like, it wasn't, I feel like an incorrect word is malicious. Like, it wasn't coming from a coping thing. It was more just like reckless.
Just enjoying that moment of being
but
wild.
Then, of course, just you get to a point where it starts to just nosedive, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was really a turnaround moment for me. And I think especially, I've said a lot of times SoulCycle saved my life because it was kind of like, you got to choose, sis. You can't have it all. You can't be it all.
Yeah.
And these two things, these two lifestyles, they don't work. They don't work together. They don't go together. And I always talk about this when I give like speeches and things like that, or workshops. There's that meme that says, I hope this green juice on Monday makes up for all the horrible things I did to myself over the weekend. And that was literally me. I was straddling this line all the time of like Hollywood party girl, like afters on the weekends, clubs, like I think of like Lady Gaga, bus, club, another club. Like, that was me. And then on Monday, I was like, Equinox, I'm there before work. I'm there after work. I'm part of the dance crew there. Like, I'm doing rock and model body. I'm spinning. I'm doing all these. I was like this picture perfect health girl half the time. And then this just like reckless, drunk, crazy bitch on the weekends. Like, what? So
the different parts of us.
Yeah, you can only be that can only play for so long. And then I just was like, if you're going to be the best or one of the best at this thing that you are so in love with, that you claim to be and would do anything for, why don't you start living for that thing? You know, I saw a really cool reel yesterday, and it was talking about, it was like a kind of like a weight loss reel. This is kind of random, but it was like a very heavy dad. And it says, you know, he was like playing with his kids and stuff. And it showed this whole transition of him losing weight and getting super, super fit from like very, very heavy. And he said, you know, oftentimes you say you die for the people you love, but will you live for them?
Ooh.
And I was like, oh shit, like I got chills. Like, stop, like you would do anything for this job. And now you have this job and you're jeopardizing it by your bullshit behavior. So why don't you start living for that thing? Why don't you start living for yourself, Mads? And that's really when my habits started to change. I really doubled down on my life and my diet, my habits. Like I wasn't going out anymore. You know, I traded in that red carpet lifestyle, or all whatever that even means, to really double down on the fitness and the wellness journey. And that's really when the pendulum started to shift for me.
You made the decision. And I heard this the other day by, like, his name's Myron Golden. Like, there's a difference between a choice and a decision, right? Like a choice is something you choose every day. Like you can change, you choose to wear something different every day. A decision is like, no, I've decided I'm not going back. Like a commitment to yourself. And I think that rock bottom moment allowed you to be like, no, I decided, like, I'm done with that era of my life, and I'm going to go and pursue this and live for this.
Totally.
And I love how you said earlier, just, I want to make a note on this because I know so many listening will resonate, the 10,000 hour rule.
Yeah.
And building the confidence. Because so many people are like, I just started my business. Why haven't I received the clients or this? I know. And I'm like, you guys, and Grant Cardone, all of them, like big time people are telling you, you need to do something for 10,000 hours. Do you have the grit to do it enough? Is your vision and passion there? And like the voices of like, oh, it must not be good enough. It's been 3 months in. I'm like, 3 months? You just started showing up on Instagram 2 months ago, you know? Like, what would you say to those people? I mean, yeah, the 10,000 hour rule, but just to really remind them, like, because I love how you said, like, confidence comes from really doing the reps and putting in the time and being consistent. But for those that are like maybe still having those voices that are struggling as they're in the middle of that journey.
I have a few things for sure.
Yeah.
My first one would definitely be, are you curious or are you committed?
Mm.
And what I mean by that is, you know, is this like a hobby for you that you're like just playing with because everybody else is doing it? So now you want to be like a TikTok star or whatever.
Yeah.
And the way you can figure that out is really your why. Why do you do what you do? And a lot of people can't figure that out. When it's fun, when it's going good, when the car is driving, we're like, what? Hands out the window, like on our way to Malibu. It's great. It's easy. It's very easy. When it gets hard, that's when you need your why. That's when you need to know why you do what you do, because that is the only thing that's going to get you through the hurdles. When it gets really hard, when you fall down, when you mess up, when you skin your knees, like when you want to quit, what's your why? I got to say, we're doing a podcast. There is like there are always weeks, like every other week, I'm like, I just should quit the podcast. No one's listening to me, because it's so frustrating seeing a celebrity overnight go to #1 on the charts. And I've had, we've had our podcast for years and years and years. And we're like, what are we doing? It's so defeating. And to that, I say, you really need to know your why. Why do you do what you do? Who do you want to help? How are you serving? Right? 3 rules I always say: do it messy, do it scared, and stop making it about you. Right? That's really helpful. And then I think also create over consumption. I think a lot of times when I have those bottom out moments where I want to quit or I'm getting frustrated, it's because I'm consuming other people's stuff. And it's cool to look to the right or the left and get ideas and things like that. But when it makes you start to second guess what you are doing in the journey you're going on, you need to reset. Yeah. And I think a lot of that is obviously fueled. We're living in this crazy social media world where like you see everything about everyone all the time.
Comparison.
It's bananas. It's bananas. So we could sit here and say like, stop comparing yourself, but it is so challenging because our brain is trained to go to the negative, and the negative thought, the velocity with which these negative thoughts fly into our head is insane. So it's like the only way I batter that back is truly by digging deeper into my why, knowing that that is my purpose, why I do what I do, a purpose, like for a purpose on purpose. And for me, that's to serve and inspire this community of people to be better, to dream with the lid off, to know that you can be messy and you can be sidelined in life and you could be in the Badlands and break down there, but that's not where you end up. So my whole purpose, I feel like in life, is to start people's journey. And I call that like hot wiring your heart and getting you out of the Badlands and getting you moving again. Because so many people just get stuck. Like you said, like even were we recording yet or just before, like get stuck in that crap and then they stay there and they break down
like
and they stay
think
there.
that that's their destiny. And I'm like, no. Like, this does not have to be
it.
Like
we want to get you back on the road. We want to get you on the free ride. I always like, for me, I think of like my hands out the window, like rolling to all the, like, you know, that's where you want to be. So,
yeah, no, I love that. And I love how you even brought it up because I mean, people listening here might be like, oh, you guys must be always positive. You're always inspiring or coaching people. I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'll have a breakdown maybe like once a week, every other week. Like it is normal because we still see other people, right? Like you said, you see somebody launch a podcast and boom, it's like number one in the charts. And it can feel discouraging. However, it's why are you showing up every Thursday? I actually have a reminder on my phone that says read your why before you podcast. Cause I typically podcast on Thursdays. And it's
I love that.
Yeah. I'm like, why am I showing up? The podcast is free. I'm not monetizing it. Right. Why am I here showing up? And it's,
so good.
Yeah. I do this for the why.
Yeah, I have a prayer on my computer actually that I say a lot of times before I do speaking engagements or when I teach a lot. And it's, as I step out into the world today, I pray that you would guide my steps, direct my path, help me to be a light where there is darkness and a source of hope and encouragement to those who need it the most today. So there's like all these little things, but yeah, I really believe in that. I think what's really, really challenging is obviously all of social media is a highlight reel, and a lot of us don't talk about these things. And I kind of go back and forth with like, sometimes I think vulnerability right now, this pendulum swung so far. There's a smart way to do it, I guess. I don't know if that's the best adjective around it. But for me, I think it's like, it's not that you don't feel the feelings. It's that they're very much just a part of life. You get better at managing them.
Yes.
And I think that it's like, you can't stop the bad thoughts from coming. Of course they're going to come.
Yeah.
But what are the techniques you used to kind of keep them at bay or tell them, no, go sit in the corner. Like you're not doing that. I do that a lot with like anxiety and performance anxiety. And I've learned this from my sports psychologist and things like, no, I'm good at this. You go sit in the corner. Don't tell me what to do. Watch me do my thing.
Yeah. I speak out loud. I don't know if you're saying it out loud.
Oh my God. If my house was, first of all, if my house was mic'd up, it would be amazing because I come up with such cool things that I can never redo. I'm like, oh my God, what was that line? And then like, by the time I get my voice note out, it's like gone. But I think, I didn't mean to cut you off, but, it's really about like stabilizing those negative thoughts.
Yeah.
So you'll hear that all the time. Like, toxic positivity. Like there really is no toxic positivity if you're like, unless you're not being true to yourself. If you're not feeling good, I mean, of course there's like the formalities of like, hey, how are you doing? Like, good. How are you? Like sometimes I want to be like, I can't be like, I'm having a horrible day. Like, you know, like sometimes you gotta like fake it a little, especially in a job setting or like a coaching session or whatever. Like people don't need to know everything that's going on in your life to some point, but as long as like the important people know what's going on, right? We're not like just covering it up. But I think that it's about stabilizing the thoughts. And for me, that's all about gratitude. And that's not to put gratitude over like a horrible, horrible situation. But I think a lot of times, like I said, we allow these negative thoughts to abandon us in the Badlands. Yeah. And for me, I think the biggest combatant to that is gratitude. Like
it brings your vibration back up.
Yes. You have so many things to be. You could be in the worst place in the world and still have gratitude about something in your life. Something is going right. And a lot of times for me, it's like my health. And that's why I created my gratitude practice, because it became like, it is my spiritual armor for the day. I do it every day. I write down 5 things I'm grateful for, 5 goals I'm going to make happen. And then at the bottom, I say, what's the best outcome that could happen to me to keep me in that forward thinking, let me future trip where I want to go. Right. If I have a big meeting, if I have a big class, it just gives me a little time to dream up what my day can look like. Sometimes it's like, what's the best outcome that could happen today? I go get a matcha latte and I call a friend and I get my like little things, but it's not a to-do list. It's like dream up what you want your day to look like.
Yeah, you got to romanticize life a little bit.
Yes, a little bit.
A lot of it. I know.
A
lot of people like are shocked that I still write 3 things in the morning that I'm grateful for. And they're like, that's so basic. And I'm like,
we don't have to overcomplicate it. Like,
yeah,
this is
I'm
not
like,
rocket science.
I can be like, oh, I have to do this today. And I'm not like, no, like, okay, cool. I woke up and like my body feels great. Let's go on a run.
It's
like
huge, especially, I always say I'm injured right now personally. And it's so crazy. Your health, your being injury free, things like that we take for granted every single day.
Yeah. And in the moments when something's wrong,
yeah,
you're like, oh, wow, I can't do this like I normally do.
Yeah.
But gratitude is like, I mean, I like to give the analogy of something like, imagine, when you give a kid a gift, right? And they're not grateful for it. They're like, I didn't want this though. And you're like, you little brat. It's like, think of God or the universe doing that too. It's like, I literally just gave you a new day to wake up. I just gave you a healthy body. I just gave you a job to pay the bills. And you're not even grateful for this. So why am I going to continue to give you more?
And it's so crazy. I say that all the time. I'm like, I don't even know who you are. And I bet I could name 50 things off the bat for you to be grateful for, especially when I'm at SoulCycle. I'm like, you're moving your body. Yeah. You can be here. And I always have to catch myself being like, well, I got to do this or I got to do that. And I'm like, nope, Mads, you get to do that. And sometimes my dad will say it to me on the phone. I'm like, I hate when my dad like re-preaches back at me, but it's so true. And then you have to like rewire a little bit, be like, yeah, and I do get to do this. I get to.
Yeah, it's taking control, like be in the driver's seat, take captive of those thoughts because you are not your thoughts. And it's just like bringing it back in. And it's, I resonate. So tell us a little bit about the gratitude book. So
it's called Wildly Capable, Wicked Fearless, and it's available on Amazon Prime. Okay. It's just a paperback. It's about like 100 pages. Same page every day. And you just do it every morning, preferably in the morning, obviously for nurses and different professions out there at a different time. But I always say, like, if you can do it first thing, that kind of zips you up for the day so that when things come your way or the circumstances are circumstancing or the elements are elementing, you kind of have this like around you that is like impenetrable to all the BS out there. 100%. And you're much more likely to stay grounded and stay in that good energy when you have this practice that really kind of like zips it up.
I like to say it's like the glasses that you're choosing to wear for the day. Like what lens are you seeing it through?
Mine are rose colored for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, me too. Rose and gold are my favorite, but it's how you get to choose to see the day. And at the end of the day, it's a choice. Like it's cliche, but like, are you looking at it half full or half empty? Like it's so cliche, but that's because everything is basic. Really, like go back to the basics. It's not rocket science. We don't have to overcomplicate it. Like, oh my goodness.
You don't need like a 20-step skincare routine. I mean, some of us might, but like, you know what I'm saying?
For real. Yeah. So, everybody listening, go check that out because that's actually what like drastically shifted me in my life when I, I was like depressed and anxious and just hitting my rock bottom is I got into a gratitude practice and I had like a journal similar to that like just guided me and just showed up every day. And then it became like a muscle and then a habit and just the lens I viewed the world. So definitely check that out. What would you say is like, you've gone through a lot of shifts and pivots, and I feel like that's a lot of like identity. And you said like perfectionism and all of this, right? And I feel what I hear a lot lately is like, how do you just surrender into it or just trust? Like, how did you trust yourself to be an assistant or trust to move into digital marketing or trust to be the SoulCycle or like that it was all going to work out for you, right? Like,
okay. So I think it's really challenging to take those blind leaps of faith. For me, I would say I'm pretty religious. I'm Catholic, but I follow a lot of different things. And for me, sometimes full surrender is like, you got to hit your knees. And I've had a lot of those moments in life where I was like, I can't control this. I don't have control. There's no control here. It's not in my hands. And I have to let it go because it's too heavy for me to carry. It's like, I say this prayer a lot. Like, I don't pray that the load gets lighter. I pray that my shoulders get stronger and my faith shows me how to handle it.
Yes.
So it's like, and I think about that a lot of times too, when I think about things that are getting hard or I'm nervous or I'm anxious, I'm like, maybe, maybe your assignment on this earth is bigger, which is why it's harder for you right now. Like there's a bigger purpose. There's something going on here that you can't see, kind of like almost like stairways to heaven. Like you can't see the top and you're taking every step and it's super, super hard. And you just have to have this faith. And I think that comes not only from a practice of belief in a higher power, but I also think it comes from trust and faith within yourself. When you keep promises to yourself and you show up for yourself over and over again, you build a different sense of trust. Did I have a lot of trust in myself when I was drinking and being an idiot? Did I have a lot of trust in myself at certain points in my life where things weren't going right, things like that? No, I had to throw up my hands and say, Jesus, take the wheel, because I can't do this by myself. I can't do this. And that takes a lot of pressure off, honestly.
100, like, I mean, I'm a woman of faith too. I actually grew up Catholic. I mean, I think
cool.
most of us in New England probably did.
Yeah,
There's so many like Irish, Italian roots up there.
Yeah.
But I tell everyone, I'm like, but like, I think there's just something so powerful in believing there's something more powerful than us, higher than us, that like we can carry our burdens to and like leave them to. And like for me, it's God. And I know a lot of like I was in the new age spiritual world and I like didn't feel like I had that like faith and that support to carry my burdens. And luckily I came back to Jesus, and like it's a night and day difference of like the amount of surrender I've been able to do to be like, God's got me. Like, it's got my back.
It's so funny because I was just talking about this with a girlfriend of mine, where I feel like a lot of times like religion gets weaponized and it's used to hurt people, or people are really upset with God because really bad things have happened in their life. There's always that flip. But sometimes my argument when people are like, well, I don't have a faith practice, I say, and this is like, I mean, take it or leave it, I'm like, maybe your shit hasn't gotten rocked. Because when I was in jail for the weekend and that was like the worst thing that's ever happened to me, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do, obviously. What do I do? What do I do? I just started praying. Blind prayers. Okay, I learned the Our Father when I was younger. Okay, I'll do the Our Father. Okay, do I know the Hail Mary? I prayed for 3 days straight. I don't remember so many details of that weekend, which is like so wild to me. Like I don't remember the colors. I don't remember anybody I talked to. Like it's wild.
Wow.
But what I do remember is laying there and just praying. Just get me out of here. Like I'll like, and so it's such a challenge because there's so much crap around it.
Yeah.
But for me, that's like, I don't know what I would do without it. And I wish, and I hope, and I personally pray that everybody can find that relationship, because definitely the only reason that I've been able to persevere and prevail throughout my life in crazy situations and get through things like major grief and downfalls and like all the really shitty, sucky things in life, my faith has given me a light through. Honestly.
I'm right there with you. And, I do agree. It's sad. Like humans have tainted. Is that the word?
Yeah, but
tainted,
humans are flawed.
Exactly.
Are flawed.
And like, it's all about the relationship, like you said. And like what I tell people, I'm like, okay, well, like, what did Jesus do to you? And they're like, well, the church, well, the pastor. I'm like, that's not him. That's not
I get
him.
that.
Yeah. So I get it. But I agree. Like I get asked that question all the time, and I'm like, it's been my faith. I mean,
and it has to be personal. I think that's the other thing. I think it's really upsetting that there are certain figures that almost screw it up for everybody.
Yeah.
It's got to be really, really personal. Like I don't push mine on anybody. I'm like, it is what it is. And it's kind of like what I say a lot of times, like take what you want, leave what you don't. There are definitely certain factors that I don't like or I don't agree with.
Yeah.
But I take what I want and I leave what I don't. I call that like the buffet of life. Like if you go to the Ritz-Carlton, you don't put food on your plate that you don't like. You don't fill up on things that you don't like, right? Or that don't serve you. So don't do that in your life.
Yeah. With people, with beliefs,
places,
anything.
things, anything. Yeah.
Religion,
like all of it.
No, I agree. It's like, I've actually talked, a lot of people even listening here, like religion, they have had that church trauma, and luckily, like they've been a lot of people have messaged me like your, episodes have been able to bring me back to God based on just like how I walk the walk and like just that, right? Like I'm not here preaching, telling anybody to do anything, but it's like my stories or the guest stories are like, oh my goodness, let me come back to him or who is he? Like, how can I build that relationship? And I think it's like that. It's like, you're talking about faith. Like, what would that look like? What does a prayer look like? And sometimes it's just being you and having your own relationship and you again, choosing just because I believe in something this way does not mean you have to adopt it.
Absolutely.
But like, what does that look like for you though? Like choose something. Yeah, I love that. I was not expecting to go there, but I think it's big. I think having that faith, and I think the most successful people in the world like that, they have something like that, like a faith to be able to surrender to and rely on, and like that trust within themselves and something higher than them. And I think it's huge. I know one topic I wanted to really touch on here, because I know a lot of people say this, like some people just feel like they're not unique enough. Right. And I know you mentioned like the Marvel complex. You talk about like, honing in on what makes you like unique, your superpower. And I just want to try to end on this because I know this is so prevalent in my community. Like they're like, there's enough coaches or therapists or teachers on TikTok, like whatever. And I'm like, how do you support anybody who comes to you with this? And how did you go about it?
Totally. I am like a huge Marvel movie fan. And to be honest, I kind of got this idea. This is so crazy. I was in the bathroom at Xoxo, and this was a while ago. We had different articles on the walls. And I've actually tried to find this article, and it's somewhere, I think it was the New Yorker or something. But it talked about, how do we find Xoxo talent? And it talked about X-Men and everybody. Well, it didn't say X-Men. It said finding their X factor. And then my creative brain kind of took that on as, like the X-Men. Like, oh, well, I like comics. And when I think of my favorite superheroes, like when I think of how they all show up to battle Thanos or whatever, I don't say like, oh, well, this person has this or this person has that. It's like this collective, powerful energy. And I think that each person is so unique in what their superpowers are. Like, I don't pit my favorite characters in these movies against each other. I love them all for different things. Like, it's almost so hard for me to pick one over the other, because it's like, well, I love Rocket, but I can't not have her. And what about her? Oh my God, I love Quill. And like, so you go back and forth and you're like, oh, I love all these things. And I think that's really also something that's a really good reminder is people can love many different things and they want to hear it from different perspectives. And everybody has such a unique life story and life experience that nobody can coach or tell your story like you. And that is your superpower. I know that sounds so cliche, like you are you and that is your superpower, but that is truly like what I hold on to is like, nobody can be me. Like you can only be second best at being somebody else. And I think where the discouragement comes from is like, we think it has to look a certain way or do whatever. And we try to emulate other people. But the more we try to do that, we get further and further away from our own authenticity and superpowers.
Yeah.
And so I'd say for anybody that's like really struggling with that, there's enough room to go around. I've always operated that way. Like my light doesn't take away from anybody else's, like that. A candle, when it lights another candle, doesn't lose. Rising tide lifts all ships. And that's really what I put out there, honestly, because I know it comes back tenfold. And while it can be discouraging to see what other people are doing and how you think you don't measure up, there's always room for more, because somebody out there needs to hear it with your inflection, with your experience, the way you tell it, your visualization, whatever you do around it. Someone out there needs you. And the perfect example of this is always like, I mean, you could say, yeah, like almost using the adverse of it. Like there is somebody out there right now that hates Marvel comics. And that's insane to me. It's kind of like Harry Potter could be your favorite book in the world, and somebody out there is still not going to like it.
Yeah.
So to use that adverse effect, it's like there's so many different opinions. There's so many different tastes. It's like 31 flavors of Baskin Robbins. There is room for you. You just need to hone in on what makes you, what makes your story, and how that can help other people through you. Like you're it.
I 1,000% and it literally could be so simple. Like I've had people like connect with me, work with me just because I was a Boston girl that moved to Florida and they wanted to move to Florida and they just like resonated with that. And for some reason, or people that like, you swear, you say wicked, like I can just relate. And it's like that simple, unique thing about you, right? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be this huge strategy of how you do something or like it could just be as simple as that, that you like cats and not dogs.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people too, the more you are willing to talk about yourself and your experience, I mean, no one knows what you've been through. That's what makes you an expert on you. But I think what really creates this level of know, like, and trust is by telling your story. And people will really want to link arms with you. I call this like the trench proof fandom factor. If you are doing anything in this world, when you create know, like, and trust to the fact that people really understand you deeply, you can take them anywhere. They want to come on the journey with you.
Yeah.
Like you see them, you hear them, you appreciate them. That's really what everybody wants to feel is value. And I think when you can create that type of trench proof, I'm in this with you. I've been through it. I've walked through it. Let me walk through it with you. That is very, very valuable. And since going back to like everything we kind of talked about before with like your why, if your why is to serve and inspire through your story of whatever it was that's unique to you that you want to help people with, because that's usually what it stems from, then that's what you hone in on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, then how do you do it? And then you get to do that in a whole way that feels right for you because you helping people, serving people looks differently for everyone. Completely.
Yeah.
Wow. No, I love that. And I really hope that those listening, I trust that it is like, I think it's just these reminders. We're all human. It's not that we're here and we don't have these thoughts or we don't have the moments of, I don't know about you, but like for me, like, the comparison or like, why me? But it's like,
We have them. I have them
yeah.
all the time. I think the main thing as a coach personally, whether it's on or beyond the bike, is a lot of times I'm not going to tell you things you don't already know. I always
Yeah.
say, my dad says this a lot and it's funny. He's like, I know what to do. I just don't do what I know. And when I think about really great coaches, and I talk about this a lot in Soul Cycle because it's more sport, but it really can go beyond anything. To me, it's not usually somebody that's going to like tell me what to do. It's I value somebody that hears me, kind of like pumps my shoulders up like I'm in the corner of like the ring, like in Rocky, and then like slaps me on the ass and tells me to get back out there and do it again. Like
Yeah.
that
That
is where
encouragement.
it's the reminder of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's the reminder of my worth, the reminder of how wildly capable I am to go out there and do this. Because a lot of us already have the skills. It's like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Like I've had the power all along. I just needed the reminder that it's
Mm-hmm.
been there all along. And I think the best coaches and the best, people, whoever you're hiring in your life, that's what they're really going to highlight and make you feel.
Yeah. Like really mirror back to you already who you are.
Yeah.
Outside of reading your why, do you have anything else, the why and the gratitude of like bringing, like either reminding yourself or do you have a community
Yeah.
that like supports you if when that happens?
Yeah, I think you definitely need to find, I call them like your spiritual running buddies, the people that are kind of going to like smack you with a spiritual 2x4 and be like, wake up, stop it. Like you're being ridiculous or like stop doing that to yourself. Say 3 nice things about yourself. You always need those kind of people around you in your life. For me, my parents are huge. My dad is huge for me. I talk to my dad multiple times a day, all day. There's just having people around you is so, so crucial. And to anybody out there that is saying like, well, I don't have people, then you have to find your third place. You have to find the other community outside your home, your work to find those people. And this has been a huge topic I've been talking about lately is be what you need. So a lot of people are like, well, I don't have a lot of friends or I don't have this community. And I'm like, well, then get out there and start being it to other people. When you show up to Soul Cycle or other places where you might meet people, I'm using that because that's really a third place for community. I know for me and so many others is like the gym or where you go to work out, or maybe it's your Pilates studio, something like that, something in movement, probably. That's a huge community pool. If you're not looking up from your phone at the lockers or saying hi to the person on the mat next to you, you're doing yourself a disservice because I guarantee that you have more in common with the people in that room than maybe some of the people that you say are your closest friends.
100%.
So that's where you find the community that wants to usually go after something bigger or strive for more. So look to your right and your left once in a while and like look up from your phone and see who's around, because that support might be right there, but you're just like closed off to it. You have to be open to it.
All of that, and like really just embody what you're desiring and what you're seeking.
Yeah.
Be that.
Yeah.
Then you can attract it. Oh, I love this. I love this. This is so good. Thank you, Madison, for sharing all of this.
This is so juicy.
So juicy. I love ending with 3 questions.
Okay, I'm down.
What's the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
Oof. Best piece of advice I've ever been given. Honestly, this was a Rachel Hollis thing from a while back. And I don't know if it originated with her, but it's kind of along in the vein of like anyone who's doing more than you is never going to drag you down. It's always people doing less, or anybody who's going to pass judgment on you is always doing less than you. Very rarely will you be judged or criticized by somebody who's doing more.
Yeah, that's a really good one, especially when you're like making those pivots or shifts or going after something in life and your family, your friends are like,
that's really, really helped me a lot when it comes to like negative feedback or, trolls or people just trying to like come for you, whether it's online or beyond. It's only ever people doing less. And your light or what you are seeking is just kicking up dust in them because they're not willing to go do it themselves.
Yep. Amen to that. I love it.
Yeah.
What would, that's a really good one. No one's ever said something like that. So that's a good one.
Love that.
What would you like, either self-advice to your younger self or just maybe someone listening, but like as if you were speaking to your younger self, whether it's a teenager or when you were in rock bottom moment, like what are the words you felt like you could like go back in time and just tell yourself?
I always want to say like relax, because I can hear Oprah saying that on Super Soul Sundays. Like I would just tell her to relax. I think in the vein of like this too shall pass, is everything is temporary. And you can take that as like metaphysical as you want, but like literally everything is temporary. Yeah. And so we get in these places where we think things are going to last forever, when it's like, this is but a blip in my one beautiful life. Kind of in that same vein of like, if it's not going to matter in 5 years, like, why are you letting it take up so much real estate in your head? That kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think sometimes we can get caught up in that, especially when we're younger, when we like, it's how we learn the lessons, right?
Like we think everything is so finite. Like, this is all it's going to be forever. I'm going to hate my job forever. Like, it's like, well, breathe. Yeah.
It's so not relaxed, be that way.
But also like, well, I always think of the thing when like, maybe it was like a meme or something a while back, when it's like, when someone tells me to relax and it plays like the jock jams, let's get ready to rumble. Cause like if someone tells you to relax, you're like, I'm
the last thing you're gonna
I'll give you 3 seconds to run.
Yeah. I tell my fiance that all the time. I'm like, don't tell me to relax.
Dare. Yeah, totally.
I love that. And finally, what was a book, resource? Obviously I want you to share where they can find you, but something that either supported your journey or for those listening that you could just recommend that they can just listen to, read.
So many books. I'm like a super, super avid personal development reader. I went so deep down that rabbit hole. So if anybody out there ever gets stuck on like, Mads, I need a book, you can always DM me. I'm like literally a trove of books, but I have to always throw it back to Gabby Bernstein's Spirit Junkie. She's kind of like the gateway drug for spiritual self-growth and development. And I read that book at a time where I was in a very, very, very dark spot. I had just broken up with a boyfriend that I was like so in love with. He broke up with me, so again, no control on his terms. And that book just saved my life. It was given to me by a friend. So again, like if there is a book on your wall right now that somebody gave you, I guarantee the answers that you're seeking right now in this moment are probably in that book on the damn shelf. So take it down and read it.
Yeah.
But Spirit Junkie by Gabby Bernstein, that one really set it off for me. Saved my life.
I love that. I've read a few of her other books, not that one.
Yeah.
And I honestly, my best friend had a book just randomly in her apartment show up as she moved. I've had books appear in my life, so I 1000% agree. Whether someone gifted it to you, you're like, where did this just come from?
someone's giving it to you for a reason. There's
like,
a reason.
Go read it. 100%. Mine was the Celestine Prophecy, which is like oh, I'm so glad you know this book.
Oh my God. I know. We could do a whole podcast on books. And like
that book was so beautifully magical.
I may have to go read it again.
Oh, I will. Like, that's something you can, but it's like fictional but truth, and it like
so
broke me open at that time, and I just found it in my fiance's apartment in Boston, and like they were like, we've never seen that book before. And I'm like,
we're like, great.
I'm gonna take it. This calling my name. Yeah. And finally, where can everybody find you? I know you said the gratitude journal is on Amazon, but where can they listen? Where they find you? Where they can are you doing clients? Do you do work with clients?
I do a lot of one-on-one clients right now. So to be completely transparent, I'm going through, like we said, a huge rebrand and really trying to figure out a more cohesive, not only look, but feel for everything I'm doing. So for now, you can find me at Maddison Ciccone, Madison Ciccone. Yes, like Madonna's last name. Just on Instagram. Obviously, I have a website and everything from there, some freebies, things like that. The journal, Wildly Capable, Wicked Fearless, is on Amazon. And then I additionally have a podcast called Wicked Fearless, which you can listen to on any format that you listen to podcasts on. So that's really it. And I always say it goes down in the DM, to be honest. So I have a TikTok. It's under so speaking of this rebrand, I was Mads Tads up until literally a month ago, where I saw that my name was available after literally, like, I don't know, however long I've been on Instagram.
Oh, wow.
And I looked over at my husband during the Super Bowl and I was like, I got to change it. He's like, do you want to do that at 9:00 right now? Like, what if you lose your account? And I just like changed my name overnight. So Mads Tads was this like funny name in high school that honestly was my Instagram handle up until very recently. People will still see me on the street and call me Madsy Tadsy or whatever. A lot of my friends call me Mads, Madison, interchangeable, whatever. So on TikTok, I'm still Mads Tads, but I'm not very good at it. I'm just like, trying to throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
TikTok's, I feel like, the place for messy action.
It's a whole other beast, but
it's a whole other might shut down
for lack of trying.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Well, I'll make sure to put all the links below, and just thank you so much for being on here. Thank you everybody for listening. I hope you gained so much value from it. If you do, take a screenshot, tag us on Instagram, share it with somebody, and we hope you come back for the next episode. Hope you guys all have the most radiant day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to share it with me and write an Apple iTunes review so I can keep the good stuff coming your way. If you aren't already following me, you can find me on Instagram at Tatiana_Couto. Make sure to tag me in any posts that you share. I love and appreciate you so much and cannot wait to connect with you in the next episode. In the meantime, go out and radiate your light into the world.